Chapter 4 My Only. It was after that experience that the memories, that the recognition of this other being began to come back to me. It was when I tried to know more, when I tried to find him, that he disappeared. I found the erased recollections working their way into my consciousness again. One in particular started to surface. My cheeks burned as I feared what she was about to do. Molly stepped on Joey's hand while he colored, causing him to let out a scream as he dropped his broken robin's egg blue crayon to the floor. She paid no attention to him as she cupped her hands round her mouth and pointed in my direction.
No one taught to her. She's a weirdo and says she sees monsters. Plus she pees in her pants.
I regretted that one time my parents had invited Molly to spend the night since her parents were going out of town. Not only had she bent my pickup sticks, cheated at Candyland, and criticized my mom's mac and cheese, she was also witness to me wetting the bed. It was one of the nights when he showed up again. She was fast asleep on the other cot, but though my eyes were closed, I was wide awake. He was especially frightening that night because he genuinely had grown angry with me. I had disappointed him somehow, and his booming voice in my ears was far from the playful pretense I had known. I was too scared to move even an inch even though I had to pee, so by the morning my sheets were ruined. I was pulling so hard on my black ringlets as I watched everyone laugh. The teacher pulled Molly off the table but didn't even put her in timeout because Mrs. Ruthie went to lunches every Monday with Molly's mom. I started crying, and when Billy came over and accused me of being a crybaby, I walked out of the classroom, shutting the door hard behind me. As I walked around alone, I decided to go into the 5th grade hallway. It was darker than the bright 1st grade hall I was used to. They actually had lockers and hard work like writing poems and taking science tests and stuff. I thought I saw a flash glance off the metal surfaces of the lockers, striking enough to make me turn around, but there was nothing. I kept walking but started hearing the heels clacking nearby, so I took a quick turn. Sitting in timeout would have added even more to my immense embarrassment. I couldn't face those kids with their grimy faces and malignant little minds anymore. This time I saw the flash again, but I caught where it was coming from. One of the lockers, number 305. I walked slowly towards it, watching the glow emanating from all its edges and through the opaque red metal. It was strange in the way it felt, hot to the touch but not enough to burn my skin. There was no lock on it, but I had never used a locker before, so I had no idea how to open it. I jangled and tugged on the metal piece to open it, but it didn't budge. A 5th grader caught sight of me struggling with the locker. I expected him to gasp by the way it glowed, but it was like all he saw was me, standing here and fumbling with the metal piece. "Need some help there?" he said as he slid the metal piece up, leaving the door open only a crack. "Don't you see the glow?" I stammered to him, watching his eyebrows arch. "Don't know what you're talking about," he shrugged. "Never mind," I said quietly, looking down as he walked out of sight. I looked back up at it. It was glowing as radiantly as ever. I hesitantly brought my hand up to the crack, wondering what I would see inside. I heard the heels clacking again nearby, so I swung the door open and was blinded by the flood of light I was now stepping into. The world I left behind was one of childhood malignance, but this one I was finding myself in could only be described as beautiful. It was the product of him, because only he would know what kind of fantastical things exist in my mind. I saw the wonders he was forming around me. He could spread magic anywhere, fashion beautiful realities from anything. He searched deep into my mind, uncovering and resurrecting every resident dream and daydream. And like Michelangelo at his rough marble slab, he took up his hammer and chisel and began forming them from the as yet unhewn reality. As a child, all I could do was look on and watch as every inch of his work sparkled and glistened, mesmerizing me with each overtone and undertone. A million images, a million dreams flashed around me, changing the scenes as my feelings flickered in sync. The sky changed into every color imaginable: pink, green, blue, golden, purple, orange, red, to new hues captivating enough to make robin's egg blue only pale in comparison. The fast flickering slowed as the major scenes began to take form. It was just before twilight. The sky was light blue, fading into golden on the horizon, the light colors making the dark forest in contrast before me look so very black. I walked into the black forest, imagining him showing himself from behind every tree, above every dangling branch, but something told me I wouldn't see him, maybe not for a long time. Only hear him. He was humming. I walked for a long time until I realized I wasn't growing tired. I started to feel myself breathing harder and harder because these surroundings, this place, it made me feel so alone, as if no matter how long I would walk, I'd be unable to surface, to find myself amongst others again and out of this forest. I did surface from the forest only to see the light breaking upon fields and fields, covered with yellow dandelions. They blew in the wind as if cued by my presence, gliding against my ankles. At the end of the fields there was a great expanse of glittering water. I walked alongside it, waiting for him to speak. "Who are you?" I said aloud.
You already know.
His dark voice almost made me lurch a little upon hearing it so clearly. "No, I don't."
You'll learn in time.
"But why? Why me?" I sputtered, aware he was ending his talk. But he was already gone. What he left with, though, was undoubtedly memorable. It was just as his voice faded from my mind that I saw something snaking its way out of the water in an almost mechanical fashion. It was so green. When it came out in full stretch, its scales glittering as if studded with emeralds, its mouth curling open, I saw it was a sea monster. It came so high that I felt I needed to squint just to see its head, lost in the clouds somewhere up there. It arched its back, and with the immense curvature in its spine, it used it as propulsion and roaring, straightening out just as it sounded out the largest note of its screech. I had seen this before in a dream. He knew it was my favorite. I found myself smiling up at it, and it began to lower itself into the water, splashing the sea spray in my face as it did so. I was now eye level with it, so close I could touch it. This is when my dream had ended, so I had no idea what he would design to happen next. The reptilian eyes were so clear. The way the light glanced off of them subtly made them have so many dimensions. There was innocence and non-malignance in the way the corners of the eyes rounded, the diluted yellow pools and sharp black pupils that were its eyes made it unreadable. I leaned in hesitantly, with my lips forward to kiss it on the nose. As I did, its golden eyes flashed, full again of dimensions, again unreadable. After some moments, it took me from where I was, swinging me over its back and diving into the darkening depths, no longer glittery blue, but black. I thought I wouldn't be able to breathe. But I was able to down here. It wasn't the normal sort of ocean I had known or seen before, and it wasn't black. It was purple. I got the sudden feeling that I was seeing this world through someone else's eyes, maybe through his. I didn't know, but what I did know was that this was undoubtedly the most beautiful thing I had seen until this point. There was no form of life, terrestrial, marine, small, nor large, and all alike, that couldn't be accounted for in this space. It was capable of the limitless bounty and capable of the sort of power only places with immense life can have. Imagine some of the most populated cities and the sort of trademark they have on culture and life systems. It had that sort of importance, but in a particular way I'm certain we humans have never before encountered. I was only a child at the time, but I can still feel that breathless feeling even when I think about it now. In the center of this place, there was a large, clear glass globe. Orange flames erupted inside, burning against every inch of glass, flaring but contained by the clear sphere. The core of the fire was blue. The flames changed into visible electric current streaming from my fingers to the blue core of the glass ball. The power made my heart stammer. I immediately released my hand, becoming a girl igniting a storm in this contained glass space, and then fearing my own power, wanting to retreat under covers, away from what I had created, from what I had seen here. The sea monster came in, sweeping me like a rag doll out of this place, out above it all, surfacing. I came above the water, gasping, as if I had been drowning before. In the panic, I was almost completely oblivious to what was raining over me. Seahorses. Lightly colored seahorses falling over my head from a profound sky with its profound clouds. He was calming me. Each one was unique and ornate in ways that made me wonder of its creator and appreciate the artistry and the colors. I was elated as I outstretched my arms in the light of the rosy evening sun, slightly obstructed by the seahorse clouds, wishing so much that I could see where they were coming from. My desires were heard. The sea monster came again, breaking majestically through the surface and bringing me with it as it soared straight upwards into the evening sky. The clouds were scalloped. The ones raining seahorses were puffy and round, not flat and spread out like scrambled eggs like the others. The sea monster piled through the different varieties. The light clouds moved apart from our bodies in a puff. The seahorse ones were denser, making more palpable the sort of sweet softness normally associated with clouds. As we passed through the seahorse cloud, we fell, falling with the seahorses to the water below. I felt this reality unraveling. The colors were fading. I caught a seahorse in my hand, and the ornate details I had noticed before were gone. Its shape was uncurling, settling into a blob that fell through my fingers like melted crayon wax as I braced myself for whatever impact awaited me below. The locker door was open. I was inside. My arm was securely in the painful grasp of Mrs. Ruthie as she dragged me out of there and down to the first grade hall and back to the classroom. Her heels clacked unmercifully, even louder than before, as she swung open the door, and everyone laughed as I entered, shaking and still coming to terms with my reality. Mrs. Ruthie let go of my arm. I rubbed it and looked at the red that was coloring over my normally light brown skin so that I could avoid seeing their faces. When I finally looked up, I saw Molly beginning to climb the drawing table again, probably to yell something like, "Time out!" among other things. But just as she was about to, she slipped and fell to the ground hard, cracking her two front baby teeth and leaving a big pool of blood. Mrs. Ruthie forgot to put me in timeout in the chaos of stopping Molly's blood flow before the next few minutes when the parents would be here to pick us up. He never did tell me if I could have attributed that scene to him. He and I were the architects, the artists, the illusionists, the scientists of every new world we created for ourselves. He took me there when he opened the door. I never understood why he didn't just keep the door open all the time, because if I could stay there with him indefinitely, I would. I remember one time we were swinging on a large wooden swing, hanging from an old oak tree branch in the middle of a yellow field. He was beside me, all around me, in the wood of the swing, in the fibers of the grasses, in the gases of the atmosphere. I couldn't see him, but he sounded to me from all the different components of his constructed world. The sun was just at a tilt, staying there perpetually in perfect position for all the hours and days we spent in this illusion. He could make candy flowers erupt from the ground in such positions that my curly hair curved perfectly around each one if I so decided to lie down and bask. But I decided to stay seated on the swing as he kept it in a gentle swinging motion without any effort on my part. I asked him, "Am I yours?" He said,
You are my only.
I didn't think of him so much as a monster anymore now that I was older, but more like something unencountered, an unexplainable, wonderful phenomenon. I never understood how it was possible, but I also never questioned it. When I did wonder, when I did question, that's when I couldn't find him. And after I couldn't find him for a long time, that's when I knew he was gone. I learned then to have never grown up, to have never begun to question his forms, his causes, his purpose. He or time had done something to my mind then that had faded all memories of him, all reminders of him. I had become like my parents in believing he was just a figment of my active imagination. I did the normal things that adults do. I grew up, but I did so while retaining childhood in my nature. Maybe I was that way because a part of me was unconsciously hanging on to the fantastical childhood he had colored my past with. I remembered something about a sea monster and seahorses, but all the sort of detail and intensity of the experiences and the imagery and the sound of his voice, all of those each day grew farther from me, despite the amount I practiced remembering it.